Have you ever imagined that working in a place that was scary and would traumatize you for the rest of your life? If you haven't, this video will describe 8 true scary Craigslist job stories. Use earphones to make the atmosphere even more tense. Here's the story. In 2011, a series of gruesome murders in Ohio revealed the horrifying potential dangers lurking behind seemingly innocent Craigslist job ads. The mastermind of these chilling crimes was Richard Beasley, a man who presented himself as a preacher, but whose intentions were far more sinister. Along with his teenage accomplice, Brogan Rafferty, Beasley used Craigslist to lure desperate job seekers to their deaths. It all started with a job ad posted on Craigslist. Beasley and Rafferty advertised a handyman position for a 688-acre farm in southeastern Ohio. The ad promised good pay and free housing, making it an attractive opportunity for many people struggling to find stable employment during tough economic times. One of the first to respond to the ad was Ralph Geiger, a 56-year-old homeless man. Geiger saw the job as a chance to rebuild his life. He met with Beasley and Rafferty, who appeared friendly and genuine. However, instead of finding a new beginning, Geiger was led to a remote area where he was murdered and buried. Geiger's fate was a harbinger of the horrors to come. David Pauly, a 51-year-old Navy veteran from Virginia, was another victim of Beasley's deceptive ad. Pauly had lost his job and home, and he viewed the handyman position as a lifeline. He too was lured to a secluded area, murdered and buried. Beasley and Rafferty's cold-blooded actions showed no remorse as they continued their deadly scheme. The deadly spree might have continued indefinitely if not for Scott Davis, a 48-year-old man from South Carolina. Davis responded to the ad and met Beasley and Rafferty, who led him to a remote wooded area under the guise of showing him the job site. Growing suspicious, Davis became increasingly uneasy. His instincts proved correct. As they walked through the woods, Beasley suddenly pulled out a gun and shot at Davis, hitting him in the arm. Despite his injury, Davis managed to flee, running through the dense forest until he found help. His escape was not only a testament to his courage, but also a crucial turning point that led authorities to uncover the deadly plot. Davis's report to the police set off a major investigation. Law enforcement officials were able to piece together the pattern of murders through meticulous detective work. They discovered the bodies of Geiger, Pauly, and Kern in shallow graves on the property where Beasley had lured them. The investigation revealed that Beasley had a history of criminal behavior, including charges of drug trafficking and sexual assault. The trial of Richard Beasley and Brogan Rafferty attracted significant media attention due to the shocking nature of their crimes. Beasley was found guilty of multiple charges, including aggravated murder, and was sentenced to death. Rafferty, being a minor, was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The case of the killer handyman serves as a grim reminder of the potential dangers lurking in the shadows of online job postings. It highlights the importance of caution and vigilance when dealing with unknown individuals on platforms like Craigslist. The tragic deaths of Ralph Geiger, David Pauly, and Timothy Kern underscore the vulnerability of those seeking to improve their lives through employment opportunities. In 2017, Emma, a young woman from Los Angeles, found herself intrigued by a job posting on Craigslist that seemed too good to be true. The ad offered an opportunity to model for a reputable fashion photographer, promising to expand her portfolio and potentially launch her modeling career. Eager for the chance, Emma responded to the ad, setting in motion a series of events that would haunt her for years. The Craigslist ad stood out with its professional tone and enticing promises. It described a photo shoot with a well-known photographer who had worked with major fashion magazines. Emma, who had been trying to break into the modeling industry, saw this as a golden opportunity. After exchanging a few emails, she arranged to meet the photographer at his studio the following weekend. The day of the shoot, Emma arrived at the address provided, which was in an industrial area on the outskirts of Los Angeles. The location was far from the glamorous studio she had imagined, but she reassured herself that this was just a stepping stone. As she approached the building, a man who introduced himself as Greg greeted her. He was friendly and seemed professional, putting her somewhat at ease. The studio was sparsely furnished, with basic lighting equipment and backdrops. Despite the unusual setting, Emma decided to proceed. Greg started with a few standard shots, giving her directions and making small talk. However, as the session progressed, his demeanor began to change. He started making inappropriate comments about her appearance and suggested increasingly provocative poses. Emma's discomfort grew, but she felt trapped. She didn't want to appear unprofessional or ungrateful for the opportunity. When Greg insisted on more revealing shots, she hesitated, feeling her instincts screaming that something was wrong. Emma's unease reached a breaking point when Greg asked her to change into an outfit that was nothing more than lingerie. She refused, citing her boundaries and professional standards. Greg's reaction was unexpectedly aggressive. He became visibly irritated and tried to pressure her into compliance. Realizing the situation was dangerous, Emma concocted an excuse about needing to check something in her car. Once outside the studio, she quickly got into her car and drove away, her heart pounding. She felt a mixture of fear and relief as she sped away from the industrial area. That night, she recounted the unsettling experience to a friend who urged her to report the incident to the police. Emma contacted the police the next day, providing them with all the details she could remember about Greg and the studio. The authorities took her report seriously and began an investigation. It turned out that Emma's instincts had been correct. Greg was not who he claimed to be. The police discovered that Greg was actually a convicted sex offender who had been using Craigslist to lure young women into dangerous situations under the guise of modeling opportunities. He had a history of predatory behavior, and Emma's report helped the authorities track him down. When they searched the studio, they found hidden cameras and other evidence that confirmed his malicious intent. Emma's brave decision to report Greg led to his arrest and subsequent conviction. The revelation of his true identity and past crimes sent shockwaves through the modeling community. It also served as a stark warning to other aspiring models about the potential dangers of online job ads. In 2019, Melissa, a 19-year-old college student from San Diego, was in desperate need of a part-time job to help cover her tuition and living expenses. Browsing through Craigslist, she came across an ad that seemed perfect. A single father looking for a babysitter for his two young children. The job offered decent pay, flexible hours, and was conveniently located near her campus. The ad was well written and detailed. It mentioned that the father, John, worked long hours and needed someone reliable to care for his children in the evenings and on weekends. Melissa, with her previous babysitting experience and love for children, felt confident that she was an ideal candidate. She quickly responded to the ad, providing her credentials and references. John replied promptly and arranged an interview at his home. He sounded friendly and professional over the phone, which put Melissa at ease. The address he provided was in a quiet, suburban neighborhood, further alleviating any initial concern she had. When Melissa arrived at the house, she was greeted by John, who appeared to be in his late 30s. He was friendly and welcoming, introducing her to his children, a boy aged 6 and a girl aged 4. The house was clean and well kept, and the children seemed happy and well cared for. She was to start the following evening. Melissa's first evening on the job began normally. She played games with the children, helped them with their homework, and prepared dinner. John left for work, assuring her he would be back by midnight. Everything seemed fine until the children went to bed. As she tidied up the living room, Melissa noticed several unusual details she had overlooked earlier. There were multiple security cameras positioned around the house, all directed towards common areas and the children's rooms. She felt a slight unease but rationalized that a single father might be extra cautious about his children's safety. Throughout the evening, Melissa grew increasingly uncomfortable. At around 10 p.m., she heard a noise from the basement. Curious but cautious, she decided to check it out. The basement door was locked, which seemed odd. She knocked and called out, but there was no response. Melissa decided to call her best friend, Sarah, to talk through her discomfort. As she spoke, she heard a faint sound from the baby monitor she had set up to keep an ear on the children. It sounded like a whisper. She quickly hung up and listened more closely. The whisper was coming from the basement monitor, As midnight approached, Melissa heard a car pull into the driveway. Relieved, she assumed John was home, but instead of entering the house, the car idled for a few moments before driving off again. Alarmed, she realized something was very wrong. She decided to gather the children and leave the house immediately. As she quietly woke them and explained that they were going on a fun late-night adventure, she heard footsteps approaching the front door. In a rush of adrenaline, Melissa grabbed her phone, called 911, and bolted out the back door with the children. The police arrived quickly and found John parked a few blocks away, watching the house. He was arrested on suspicion of child endangerment and other charges. The subsequent investigation revealed that John had a history of unstable behavior and had previously faced accusations of stalking and harassment. The basement, which Melissa never got to see, contained disturbing evidence that suggested John had been planning something far more sinister. The surveillance cameras were not just for security but were linked to live streaming platforms on the dark web. The police found recordings and live feeds dating back months, documenting the children's and babysitters' activities. In the summer of 2015, Ethan, a 22-year-old college student from Illinois, was looking for a summer job to help pay for his next semester's tuition. Browsing through Craigslist, he came across a job posting that piqued his interest. A couple was looking for a farmhand to help with chores on their remote farm in rural Wisconsin. He had promised good pay, free room and board, and a chance to experience the countryside. Ethan, eager for a change of scenery and the opportunity to earn some money, applied for the job. The ad was posted by a man named Harold, who described himself as a friendly, middle-aged farmer who needed extra help during the busy summer months. After exchanging a few emails and having a brief phone interview, Ethan was offered the job. Harold sounded pleasant and professional, and the promise of fresh air and physical labor appealed to Ethan. He packed his bags and set off for Wisconsin, looking forward to a summer of hard work and new experiences. Ethan arrived at the farmhouse late in the afternoon. The property was picturesque, surrounded by rolling fields and dense woods. Harold and his wife, Betty, greeted him warmly, making him feel welcome. They showed him to his room, a small but comfortable space in the attic, and gave him a tour of the farm. Ethan's duties included feeding the animals, maintaining the barns, and helping with the harvest. For the first few days, everything seemed normal. Ethan enjoyed the physical labor and the peaceful environment. However, he began to notice strange things happening around the farmhouse. At night, he heard unusual noises coming from the woods. The sounds were unlike any animals he was familiar with: low growls, eerie howls, and occasional whispers. When he asked Harold and Betty about the noises, they brushed it off, saying it was just wild animals. One evening, while exploring the farmhouse, Ethan found a door in the basement that was padlocked. Curious, he asked Harold about it. Harold's demeanor changed abruptly, and he sternly told Ethan that the door led to a storage area and was off limits. The sudden shift in Harold's behavior unnerved Ethan, but he decided not to press the issue. A few days later, while working in the fields, Ethan saw a figure standing at the edge of the woods. It was a woman, dressed in old-fashioned clothes, watching him silently. When he tried to approach her, she disappeared into the trees. Ethan mentioned the encounter to Betty, who dismissed it as a local woman wandering through their property. But there was something about the woman's presence that left Ethan feeling uneasy. One night, Ethan was woken by a loud banging on his attic window. He looked outside and saw nothing but darkness. As he lay back down, he heard footsteps on the roof and whispers coming from the walls. Terrified, he grabbed his flashlight and went to find Harold. As he descended the stairs, the whispers grew louder, echoing through the empty house. He found Harold and Betty in the kitchen, sitting in the dark. They seemed to be in a trance, staring blankly at the wall. When Ethan called out to them, they didn't respond. Panic set in, and he decided to leave the farmhouse immediately. As Ethan rushed to gather his belongings, he heard the basement door creak open. Against his better judgment, he decided to investigate. He found the padlock on the floor had broken. The door was ajar, revealing a staircase leading into darkness. Mustering his courage, he descended the stairs with his flashlight. What he found in the basement froze his blood. The walls were covered in strange symbols and old photographs of the woman he had seen in the field. At the center of the room was an altar with candles and a large, dusty book. The air was thick with a putrid smell. Ethan realized he had stumbled upon some kind of occult ritual site. Ethan's fear turned into a primal urge to flee. He ran up the stairs and out of the farmhouse. The experience left Ethan traumatized. He returned to Illinois, abandoning his plans to work on a farm again. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had narrowly escaped a sinister fate. Over time, he tried to put the experience behind him, but the memories of that summer haunted him for years. In the spring of 2016, Officer Karen Thompson, a seasoned police officer in a small town in rural Ohio, found herself at the center of a chilling and life-threatening experience. What started as a routine investigation into a suspicious Craigslist ad quickly turned into a deadly trap that nearly cost her life. Several individuals who had responded to the ad reported strange interactions with the supposed employer. The meetings were arranged in remote locations, and the employer, who introduced himself as Mr. Davis, Officer Thompson, was assigned to investigate the ad. With over 15 years of experience on the force, she was known for her keen intuition and dedication to her work. She decided to go undercover and respond to the ad herself to gather more information. Karen created a fake identity and sent an email expressing interest in the job. Within a few hours, she received a response from Mr. Davis, who seemed eager to set up a face-to-face meeting. He suggested a secluded park on the outskirts of town, which immediately raised red flags for Karen. She agreed to the meeting but made sure to inform her colleagues and arrange backup. On the day of the meeting, Karen arrived at the park, dressed casually, with a concealed microphone and her service weapon hidden under her jacket. As the conversation progressed, Davis's questions became more personal and intrusive. He asked about her family, her living situation, and her daily routine. Karen answered cautiously, trying to keep him engaged while she signaled her backup team to move closer. Suddenly, Davis's demeanor changed. He leaned forward and lowered his voice, telling her that the job required absolute loyalty and that she would have to prove herself. Before Karen could respond, she felt a sharp pain in her neck. Davis had injected her with a syringe he had concealed in his jacket. Karen's vision blurred, and she felt her strength leaving her. She knew she had only moments before the drug took full effect. Summoning all her remaining strength, she drew her weapon and aimed it at Davis, with Karen fighting to stay conscious and keep control of her weapon. Just as Davis was about to overpower her, Karen's backup team arrived, guns drawn, shouting for Davis to surrender. In the confusion, Davis attempted to flee but was quickly tackled and subdued by the officers. Karen was rushed to the hospital, where doctors managed to identify and counteract the effects of the drug. She spent several days recovering, haunted by how close she had come to death. The investigation revealed that Davis, whose real name was Richard Malone, had a history of violent crimes and had been using the Craigslist ad to lure and abduct women. In the summer of 2018, Rebecca, a 25-year-old recent college graduate from Portland, Oregon, found herself in need of a job. She had recently moved to a new city and was struggling to find steady employment. Desperate to make ends meet, she turned to Craigslist. Among the numerous listings, one particular had caught her eye: a housekeeping job offering excellent pay, flexible hours, and the promise of a substantial end-of-contract bonus. The ad was posted by an individual named Mr. Williams, who claimed to be a businessman frequently traveling abroad. He needed a reliable housekeeper to maintain his large, secluded home on the outskirts of the city. The detailed job description included cleaning, organizing, and occasionally taking care of his garden. Rebecca decided to apply. Mr. Williams responded to her email within hours, arranging a phone interview. He seemed professional and courteous, and the interview went smoothly. On her first day, Rebecca drove out to the address provided by Mr. Williams. The house was an old Victorian mansion, surrounded by dense woods, giving it an eerie, isolated feel. Mr. Williams insisted were off limits. For the first few days, everything seemed normal. Rebecca cleaned the rooms she had access to, maintained the garden, and familiarized herself with the house's layout. However, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. She often heard strange noises, soft whispers, footsteps in the hallways, and the sound of doors creaking open and closed. One evening, while cleaning the master bedroom, Rebecca discovered an old photograph tucked away in a drawer. It was a picture of a woman who looked remarkably like her, standing in front of the house. The photograph appeared to be decades old. Unease settled in as she wondered who the woman was and why the photo was hidden. She decided to explore the locked rooms. Using a set of keys she found in the kitchen, she managed to unlock one of the doors. Inside, she found a small study filled with dusty books, papers, and old photographs. As she sifted through the contents, she discovered more pictures of the woman from the photograph, along with notes written in Mr. Williams's handwriting. The notes were disturbing, describing the woman's daily routines in obsessive detail. Rebecca's heart pounded as she realized that Mr. Williams had been tracking this woman, just as he seemed to be doing with her. She quickly relocked the door and decided to leave the house immediately, planning never to return. That night, as Rebecca packed her belongings, the power went out. Plunged into darkness, she fumbled for her phone to use its flashlight. As she made her way downstairs, she heard a noise behind her. Turning around, she saw Mr. Williams standing at the top of the stairs, his face partially obscured by shadows. He called out to her, asking why she was leaving so suddenly. Panic set in, and Rebecca bolted for the front door, but it was locked from the inside. She frantically searched for another way out, running through the darkened house with Mr. Williams in pursuit. She managed to find a back door leading to the garden, burst through it, and ran as fast as she could into the woods. Rebecca kept running until she reached a nearby road, where she flagged down a passing car. The driver, seeing her distress, took her to the nearest police station. She recounted her terrifying experience to the officers, who accompanied her back to the house the next day. When they arrived, the house was empty, and Mr. Williams was gone. Inside, they found evidence supporting Rebecca's story: the photographs, the notes, and various surveillance equipment hidden throughout the house. It became clear that Mr. Williams had been stalking Rebecca, and possibly other women before her. The investigation revealed that Mr. Williams was an alias for a man with a history of obsessive and violent behavior. He had been on the run for years, moving from place to place, targeting young women through online job ads. Rebecca's bravery in escaping and reporting him helped the authorities track him down, and he was eventually apprehended and brought to justice. In the spring of 2017, 34-year-old Mark Davidson, a mechanic from Albuquerque, New Mexico, decided it was time to sell his beloved 1969 Mustang. He needed money to cover unexpected medical expenses, and selling the car seemed like the best option. Mark turned to Craigslist, posting a detailed ad with pictures of the pristine classic car. Within hours, he received several inquiries, but one potential buyer stood out. The buyer, who introduced himself as Alex, expressed great interest in the Mustang. He claimed to be a car enthusiast and was willing to pay the full asking price without haggling. Alex's eagerness and knowledge about the car impressed Mark, making him feel confident that the sale would go smoothly. They agreed to meet in a few days at a public place, a busy supermarket parking lot, to finalize the sale. On the day of the meeting, Mark drove the Mustang to the agreed-upon location, asking detailed questions and taking it for a short test drive. Satisfied, he agreed to buy the car. However, there was a hitch. Alex claimed that he didn't have the full amount in cash and asked if Mark could follow him to his home, just a few miles away, where he had the remaining money. Mark hesitated but ultimately agreed, reasoning that he could handle himself if anything went wrong. Mark followed Alex's car through the city, eventually reaching a more isolated area on the outskirts of town. They pulled into the driveway of a modest house, surrounded by overgrown bushes and trees. Mark's unease grew as he noted the remote location, but he dismissed his fears, focusing instead on completing the transaction. Alex invited Mark inside to wait while he fetched the money. Mark decided to stay by the door, keeping the car keys in his pocket, just in case. After a few minutes, Alex's demeanor changed. He returned with his friend, both now carrying ominous expressions and brandishing weapons, a knife and a gun. Mark started the engine and sped away, tires screeching as he left Alex and his accomplice in a cloud of dust. He drove recklessly through the neighborhood, his heart-pounding eyes dotting to the rearview mirror. The sound of a gunshot echoed behind him, and a bullet shattered the rear window, narrowly missing him. Determined to survive, Mark pushed the Mustang to its limits, eventually reaching a main road where he felt safer. Shaken but unharmed, Mark drove straight to the nearest police station, where he reported the incident. Officers were dispatched to the house, but Alex and his friend had already fled, leaving no trace behind. Mark's experience left him wary and distrusting of online transactions. He couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal and fear that had come from his brush with danger. The Mustang, once a source of pride and joy, now carried the memories of a harrowing escape. In the summer of 2019, Emily and John Hopper, a young couple living in the suburbs of Seattle, were thrilled to welcome their first child, a baby girl named Lily. The couple, working professionals, and decided it was time to hire a nanny to help take care of their daughter while they balanced their demanding jobs. They turned to Craigslist, where they posted a detailed ad seeking an experienced, trustworthy nanny. Among the numerous responses to their ad, one application stood out. A woman named Sarah claimed to have over a decade of experience in childcare, including several years as a live-in nanny for families in the area. Her resume was impeccable, filled with glowing references and certifications in child development and first aid. She seemed perfect for the job, and Emily and John were eager to meet her. During the interview, Sarah was warm, articulate, and seemed genuinely passionate about childcare. She bonded quickly with Lily, who giggled and reached out for her during the meeting. Impressed by her demeanor and credentials, the Hoppers decided to hire her on the spot. The first few weeks went smoothly. Sarah arrived on time every morning, and Lily seemed happy and well cared for. Emily and John were relieved to have found someone so capable, allowing them to focus on their work without worrying about their daughter. Sarah often sent them pictures and updates throughout the day, reassuring them that Lily was in good hands. However, as the weeks passed, Emily began to notice subtle changes in Sarah's behavior. She was sometimes evasive when asked about her previous jobs. One afternoon, Emily came home early from work, surprising Sarah, who seemed unusually flustered. As Sarah quickly gathered her things to leave, Emily noticed a folder on the kitchen counter with unfamiliar documents. Curiosity piqued. She glanced at the papers and discovered that they were fake references and forged certificates. Her heart raced as she realized that Sarah had lied about her qualifications. Together, they confronted Sarah the next morning. When pressed for the truth, Sarah's demeanor changed. She admitted that her real name was Lisa, and that she had fabricated her entire background to secure the job. Shaken by the betrayal, Emily and John reported the incident to the police, fearing for their daughter's safety and wanting to prevent Lisa from deceiving other families. The police investigation revealed that Lisa had a history of using false identities to secure nanny positions across several states. The Hoppers were devastated. They felt violated and guilty for having allowed a stranger with a hidden past into their home. It took months for them to regain a sense of security and trust in others.